Hello everyone, my name is Kumar and welcome back to our channel Kumar Programming. In the JavaScript interview question answer series, today we are going to learn about this keyword, and this is very important questions. At the very first glimpse, it seems like it would be a very simple questions, but believe me, most of the experienced people are getting confused while answering it. But don't worry, in this video we are going to learn about this keyword thoroughly along with the practical demonstration. So now let's start. So in JavaScript, interviewer can ask you how this keyword used in different context. And also he can ask like, what do you understand by this keyword in JavaScript? So there could be multiple questions, but if you know the concept thoroughly, then you can answer for all those questions regarding this keyword. So now let's understand that. So mainly this keyword in JavaScript is a reference to the object which is currently executing the code, right? So this is a reference to the object and its value depends on the context in which it is used. Now let's see what all those contexts are there and how its value depends on them, right? So the very first context which we have is global context. What is global context? First of all, anything which is written outside of a function is known as a global context. You can see here, simply we are logging our this object without any function. So at this point of time, it's going to return a window object. Or in node.js, it's going to return a global object. We will see all those things in our practical demonstration. And the very next context which we have is function context. So anything is written inside a function is known as a function context, right? So here this keyword is used inside a function, inside a regular function. So this keyword used under function context. And once we are using this keyword inside a function context, then it's going to return a window object, right? And in case of Node.js, it's returning a global object. And that is the case of once we are using this keyword in non-strict mode. However, it's going to return undefined in case of use strict mode, right? So once we are using our strict mode, it's going to return undefined. So most of the time, interviewer are making you confused like when it's going to return a window and when it's going to return a undefined. Okay, I hope this is clear. So the very next context which we have is method context. So whenever we are writing any function inside an object or inside a class is known as a method, right? So there is a difference between function and method that you need to understand. Okay, and whatever the things are written inside a method is coming under a method context. Okay, so here you can see in method context we are using this keyword, and here this is going to refer to this object. Okay, or if it is written inside a class, then it's going to refer to that class object. Clear? Now further let's move to the next context, which is constructor context. And here if you see, I'm using this function as a constructor. Okay, and whenever we are using this keyword inside a constructor, it's going to refer to that object which is generated by this new keyword from that particular constructor. Okay, so now here this is referring to this person object. Clear? Now let's move to the next context, which is arrow function. And this is very important, and interviewers are making confused over here. So make the concept clear. So whenever we are using this keyword inside a arrow function, okay, this is my arrow function. And inside arrow function, I'm using my this keyword. So it's always going to return a window, okay, or global object in case of Node.js. And here in another case, if we are using our arrow function inside a regular function, okay, see here I'm using my this arrow function inside a regular function. So here the concept of closure comes into the picture, right? I have created a separate video on closure. If you want, you can watch that video to understand what closure is. But for now here, because of closure, this is going to refer to this arrow object, okay? And this arrow object is having a property as a name. So here if I'm going to call this greet function, so greet function is going to return programming which I have given inside the name, which is I'm logging here this dot name. Okay, and don't worry, we are going to see these things in our practical demonstration very soon. Now the very next context we have is explicit binding, right? So I have created a separate video on explicit binding where I have explained in detail what is call, what is apply, and what is bind. Okay, for now here you can just understand that here I have created a function, right? And inside this function I'm using this keyword, and after that I have created a user object, right? And after that I'm trying to bind this user object to this greet function. So here I'm using greet.call and I'm passing this user object. So at this point of time, this is going to refer to this object. Okay. And the same thing is happening for the apply as well. If you are passing the user object inside apply, it is going to refer this user object, right? And we know that bind is going to return a function, right? So once we are going to pass this user object inside the bind function, it's going to return a function. So it's return a function over here, right? And once we call this function, it's going to return the same user object, right? So it's very simple, right? Now further move and let's see with the next context, which is event handler. And whenever we are using our this keyword inside a event handler, at that point of time, this keyword is going to return element for which event was triggered. So here if you see, I'm logging here this value, so it's going to return a button element because this button element was associated with this event. I hope this is getting clear to you. Now let's flip to the Visual Studio Code and see all these contexts in action. Here in our VS Code, I have created a JavaScript file, this underscore keyword.js under our basic folder, right? And I have written all the code which I have explained you earlier for all these context. And now we are going to execute one by one and see the output. So here I'm going to comment it everything for now except our global context. Now let me restart my live server here. Okay, so good. Now let's inspect it. So now if you see here, this is my global context, right? If we are using our this keyword inside our global context, then always it's going to refer to the window object, right? Now let's move to the function context. Now save it. Here you can see the difference. As of now, we are not using the strict mode, right? So this keyword inside a function context always refer to the window object, right? But whenever we are using in strict mode, okay, so now we are using our strict mode. See now here our this keyword refer to the undefined. Got it? So it's very important. Most of the time interviewer asks this question in the interview. Okay. Now let's see the third context, which is the method context, right? So inside our method context, see I have created a method inside the object here and where I'm trying to access this keyword. Okay. So this is referring over here to this object. And now let me just print this here. So you will see this is referring to this object if we are using this keyword inside a method. Okay. Now let's further move and see the next one, the constructor context. So here inside the constructor context, if you see, I have created a function and that function is used as a, here I'm using my new keyword and inside this person function, I'm passing the value as a programming, right? And this programming is going to be assigned inside this dot name. And here, this is referring to this person object. Okay. So here once I'm trying to get access person dot name, I'm getting this programming value, right? So in constructor context, always this refer to the object from where it was created by new keyword. Now let's see the arrow function. So here you can see I'm having a method as a greet, right? And inside this method, I'm calling a fat arrow function, okay? And fat arrow function as a inner, right? So here, this is referring to object arrow, okay? Because of lexical scope. I have created a separate video on lexical scoping and closures. So you can watch that video. You will be able to understand that what is lexical scoping and closures, right? Now see here, and here I'm using outer as a fat arrow function, right? So at this time, this is going to represent always window. Okay, so see here, this is representing to the window object. Okay, great. Now further move and see for the explicit binding. Now here I have created a function as a greet, right? And inside this function, I'm using a this keyword. Okay, and further I'm creating this user object and I'm binding this user object to this greet function. So there are three methods that I have already explained in one of my previous videos: call, apply, and bind, right? So we are assigning this user to this greet function by using this call method. So here our this keyword is referring to this user object. Okay, and this is happening the same case in case of apply as well, and it's happening the same case with the apply as well, right? But in case of bind, we know that bind return a function. So once we are assigning this user object to the bind function, it's going to return a bound greet function. And once we call this function, it's going to return this object name property, right? Because here we are trying to access this dot name, and this is referring to this user object. Great. Now further, let's move and see our event handler. Now already, if you see in my HTML page here, I have added a button element here and text mentioned as a click me. So here you can see this is click me, and once I'll click on this, it's going to return a button element. So now let's click it and see it's returning a button element. So what we have written inside our code, that we have written, we are just trying to find out this button element from our DOM, and then after that I'm adding a click event to this button element. And if you see, I'm using this keyword inside our event handler. So this keyword refer to this button element. And see here we have console.log this, and it's returning a button element, right? So I hope that you would be able to understand thoroughly about this keyword, and you are in the position to answer any questions related with this keyword. So now this come to the end of this video, and friends, at the end of this video there is a humble request to all of you. If you have not subscribed this channel, please subscribe it and press the bell icon so you will get the notification of all of my upcoming videos. And please do like, comment, and also share this video to the people who really need it. So friends, that's all for the day. I'll see you in my next video. Till then, take care and keep learning.